And good evening. Welcome to another episode of the Vintage House Show, the best damn house show out here.
That's right. That's right.
I've just added that. Your main man Mega with co-host, the lovely and talented DJ Lori Branch.
Thank you.
We are honored, of course, as we are every week, but we've got a great pairing of guests for tonight. We have DJ Tyrone Mix.
Tyrone.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir, and welcome. And we have Errol Easy E James.
What's up, everyone?
Hey, Errol, thanks for joining us.
As MB and all those things. The Vintage House Show is powered by the Modern Dance Music and Research and Archiving Foundation. It's the only show dedicated to the preservation of this genre known as house music. It is the premier show in which we cover the history and the business, and sometimes we get into the issues of the day here on Vintage House. And again, Lori, who is co-host and a great journalist and co-host and, of course, talent, has helped us along with our colleague, Lauren Lowry, who is not with us tonight, but she is also known as our super duper producer, exec producer of the show, and the co-founder of the Dance Music Research and Archiving Foundation. So big props, there's a throwback term, to all
the
of
90s
us here on the show tonight. And we've got a great discussion. A lot of people have been asking, well, what's the connection with Tyrone and Errol? And Lori even spent some time doing some research.
You're in trouble when I start doing my research.
So, Lori, what did you find?
That usually means I call Craig Loftus.
Friend and sometimes special host of the Vintage House Show as well.
Yeah, he's a maven. He's a house music maven. He kind of knows where a lot of the bodies are buried, and he's one of my buddies. So I said, what's the deal, man? And so you can tell us what the deal is, and then we'll get into our questions with our guests.
So as everyone who follows and watches the show, and of course are students of the history of house music know, the 70s and the 80s were very pivotal, foundational years for all the things that began to influence the genre of house music and eventually gave birth to house music. Well, one of the things that you may not know is that there was this little bitty computer company that was operating on the East Coast, headquartered on the East Coast, but they were a global company called Digital Equipment Corporation. They were number 2 only to IBM, International Business Machines. This company was called Digital Equipment Corporation. At the time, in the 80s or so, they probably employed, what would you say, Tyrone, about 40,000 people?
Oh, they had worldwide a couple 100,000.
Yeah. So domestically,
worldwide, yeah,
maybe 40, and worldwide upwards of 100,000. So this company was big, and they were pioneers in connecting people, much like we do today across various platforms. But we had the privilege of being part of a connected group across all of these locations called Black Notes. And Digital, again, was an early pioneer of this thing we call social networking today. And these two gentlemen, and sometimes along with myself, were staunch advocates for infusing the importance, the spirit, the passion of house music in this early forum known as Black Notes. And so I wanted to get a little reunion going here to talk about those pioneering conversations we had on Black Notes, and more so what was the outgrowth of what these two gentlemen and the all the folks, shout out to all the DEC alumni, as we call them, that may be watching tonight. But there was surely an outgrowth and a level of influence that each of these gentlemen had. And so we want to certainly spend some time understanding who they are. So Tyrone, we'll start with you. Where did you grow up? Where did you attend high school, college, if college?
Okay. I covered this so deeply when I was on Jesse's podcast that I'm going to go really quick. I was born in an itty bitty town called Barnum, Minnesota. It's about 40 miles south of Duluth or 150 miles north of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Population less than 300 people. It was a consolidated school district, so my graduating class was 63 whole students.
Wow. Small.
While I was there, I was the one-man audio-visual team at the high school, which contained grades 7 through 12. During the summer months, the 2 years before I graduated, 72 to 74, there was an outdoor church service that was being broadcast over AM radio. And because I was hanging out, I started doing the remotes. I started engineering the remotes for this broadcast. So when I graduated, that station hired me as an on-air DJ. Of course, it was I didn't say it was a gospel station. So here's your future house music person playing I don't know, Percy Faith and whatever, the Blackwoods Brothers, and I don't, whatever.
I don't find that unusual at all. We've heard that story a lot, gospel to house. It happens. It happens.
Right.
It's a journey.
Except it wasn't a Southern gospel. It was more European gospel.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting genre.
Yes. But and then I went to school in Superior, Wisconsin, which is right across the bridge from Duluth. And after 3 years, a person from digital came up to the school and offered me a job. And originally he said they had an opening in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Minneapolis for the interview. And after the interview, the district manager said, "Well, we're sorry to tell you that you're not a good fit for Milwaukee. We want you here in Minneapolis." And 2 weeks later, I was in Minneapolis. That was the summer of 77. And by the fall, I was DJing my first ever gig, if you'll call it that, at the Gay 90s in Minneapolis.
Were you getting paid, Tyrone?
Yes, I was.
Well, that's a gig.
That's a paying.
You get paid. That's a gig.
Yeah, and I had never DJ'd before.
Well, did you have 2 turntables?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
Yes, I did. But the mixer, in 2 of the places I was at, I don't know if it was home built mixers, but it was very much like a broadcast mixer. So it had huge knobs,
Yeah.
and
Those.
yeah, it was interesting. The main DJ there was a man by the name of Jerry Silvers, and I guess you would say I watched him, but he at that time he really didn't do a lot of smooth mixes.
Hmm.
It was disco. We're talking 77 here. So it was still kind of started to fade out, and you would just bring up the next song. So I was there for about half a year. Then a new club opened up in St. Paul called the Grand Finale. I went there for about 6 months, getting a better night because the gay 90s was just a Wednesday night.
Right.
So now at the Grand Finale, I was doing Friday night, the early shift, if you will.
Hey, just to clear the air, Wednesday nights are okay.
And I want to interrupt Ty for a second. I want you to stop before you get to Chicago, because I want to ask you a few questions before you get to Chicago. Okay.
Yep.
And then we'll bring in Easy. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ty.
Okay. So then another new club opened up across the street from the gay 90s in Minneapolis, and that was the new Sun Disco. So I was there about 3/4 of a year, and then DEC transferred me to Chicago. That was April of 1980.
Okay. So we're gonna park that there.
Yep.
Tyrone's arrival to Chicago, and
Drum roll.
bounce over to DJ Errol Easy E James.
Yay.
Gay 90s is still there according to Vince. All right.
It is.
Yeah.
That's good knowledge there, Mr. McFarlane.
So for me, my origination, my start was about at the age of 13 when I started to actually do some DJing. And this was the time when originally I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And so this was the time when hip hop was just starting to come into being. We're talking about stuff like Sugar Hill Gang and things like that. So that's kind of what intrigued me. And one of the things that came up because of that was us being able to start DJing. And when I say us, I mean, when you're talking about New York, and you're talking about New York in about 1979 and 1980, you're talking about DJ crews, okay? And so the interesting thing for me was, Laura, you asked if Ty had two turntables. When I first started, I had one turntable. So I needed to recruit people in order to get a set together in order to actually do DJing. So that's where one of my boys, Kevin knows well, Calvin, Spinny C. Gordon, he had the other turntable. So one turntable plus the second turntable got us together, and, storing up to get a mixer. Then we were able to start DJing. Went to Brooklyn Technical High School, and a little bit opposite to what Ty said, our graduating class was somewhere around 500-600 at least, probably more than that, because the school itself held easily 2,500 to 3,000 students.
Wow. Yeah.
It's one of the specialized high schools in New York. And so when we started to DJ, we did most of the high school parties. If you wanted the the right music, if you wanted, you know, you had Spinny C and Easy E, both going up, cutting on the turntables, just similar that you would hear in terms of New York hip hop at that particular time. And that kind of continued until I got to college. City College of New York is where I went. And at that particular point in time, I was listening to, not just at that time, just hip hop, but one of the things that was interesting about hip hop is that you listen to all different types of music, and you're really just trying to find the break beats from that. So that's how I started to get the love for your disco, your Euro, your rock, because anywhere you would be able to find those unique types of sounds, you were always looking for them. So that then started me into the Euro, the disco, that kind of genre, which then started to introduce me into what ultimately became my love for house music. And during the time within college, one of the major places that influenced my move towards house music was, of course, by everybody's standard, the Paradise Garage. And so that was one of the main things that really helped to ignite my love for the genre, understanding how it kind of went from one place to another. When we talked about, you know, utilizing some of the Euro disco hits, the classic disco hits, classic soul funk hits, all of that just blended together and played all in one place at one time. It was just one of the most amazing things in my time.
Long live Larry.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And so once I finally graduated college, I didn't quite yet have a job, but I had a summer internship. And the summer internship was at Digital Equipment Corporation. I was recruited to go to Massachusetts. I'd never been there before in my life. And it was like, you know what? I don't have any other job. So let's go and figure out what's going on from there. And so that was my introduction to digital. And several months after finally getting into the state of Massachusetts is where Mr. Mega and I met up.
Wow, Mr. Mega, man.
and that unique tie, that unique blend of Shy and Nye of Chicago and New York fame, my boy MB, that's where that all kind of started.
That's a great story. New York City, Paradise Garage. I mean, it goes deep.
I'm jealous.
I'm jealous too. I never experienced it. Kevin, did you ever
didn't
go
either.
to Paradise?
I did not make it to the Paradise Garage.
I know it's sort of like people who say they never went to the warehouse. I kind of feel like we're on that side of the fence, you know. Never went to Paradise.
We are, yeah.
Yep, we were, was a member there for, was it in 85 through 87? So yeah, it was one of the best experiences. And Mega, you'll attest to this because a lot of the other clubs that have kind of spawned out from some of the workings and some of the things that Larry put together at the Paradise Garage. I know some of that influence made it to Chicago. Some of it continued on to some of the other clubs that you and I frequented while you know, going back and forth to New York, Sound Factory Bar, those kinds of things. So it's really one of those things where I've never looked at it as one club versus another. I looked at it all as multiple experiences that gave you everything that you wanted to know about the total the total spectrum of where house music is.
I had to throw a little controversy in there just for the folks who experienced both. You're so loving and beautiful about it. He's like, there's no competition. I appreciate it, but I would love to hear from anybody.
I've been to the warehouse.
So you can talk about the Paradise Garage versus the warehouse.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How did they differ?
I think part of the difference to me, at least at the time when I went to the warehouse, was we're talking at the time when Trax Records, DJ International Records, all of those labels were really starting to make an imprint on the world, and the pride that was shown by just making sure that those records, like the Jungle Wones, the Marshall Jeffersons, the stuff that Silk Hurley used to do, all of that stuff always came out, and it was like made sure that, listen, this is the stuff that this is where this is born out of. A lot of the what we call the jacking house. So a lot of the acid house, some of the stuff that Tyree used to come out with. I mean, listening to that, it was really a lot of high energy. Okay. And Paradise Garage had that as well. But at the same time, you can see, just based on the moods of when Larry was playing, he can take you in a totally different direction and kind of bring you into nirvana.
So someone said you had to choose one or the other, which one would you choose?
I'm not going to choose one or the other.
I can paint you in the corner.
I like my cake, and I'm going to eat it too.
Eat it too. All right. All right. Well, if anybody else is watching and you experience the Paradise Garage and the warehouse, I'd love to hear your thoughts, because that's not typically a story we talk about on Vintage House. We typically make the comparison between the warehouse and the music box.
Yes.
Because our sort of, parents were Frankie and Ronnie when it comes to origins of house music in those clubs. But I think you're right. I think that Reginald Davenport noted that the Ministry of Sound in London was inspired by the garage. And so the garage, as well as the warehouse, inspired a lot of clubs that sort of spun off from that. But if it's okay, Kevin, do you mind if I bring Tyrone into this, about some of his experiences, since we are talking about sort of making that leap to Chicago?
Absolutely.
And house music. I asked you, Tyrone, to kind of stop where you got to Chicago.
Right.
And I know a little bit about some of what I know. There was Rialto's. I know there's a Stop and Drink. Now, these are all clubs I experienced. So I know you did more on the South Side. So I'd love to hear about that. But where did you first land in Chicago? What was the first club that you worked in Chicago?
Well, I did guest spots and fill-ins, if a DJ called in sick or just didn't show up, which happened.
Where was that?
So first of all, I didn't start any DJing in Chicago until '83.
Okay.
I was totally focused on the computer job. But then in '83, I started hanging out, of course, at the Rialto, but spinning on the south side at Martin's Den, which was about 56th and State.
Oh yeah, I was there.
Sandy's.
Oh, you were there. That was you.
Sandy's 2
It was
Well,
across the street from the projects, right?
I don't remember that because it was nighttime, but it was next door to the It was next door to the laundromat.
I went to both of the, yeah. See, that was when we went out every single night of the week, Kevin.
Okay.
There was literally a party, and I think Tyrone was spinning at half of them. Seriously, like there was Martin's Den, Sandy's,
Sandy's,
yeah,
all that was happening at the same time.
Sandy's was 81st and Cottage,
Okay.
and then there's a third club. I was asked many times to spin at the Jeffrey Pub.
Yes.
In fact, when I left the Generator, they wanted to hire me, but their DJ booth was so small, and I'm 6'6".
Yes.
And the ceiling in the booth was about 5 foot something.
I remember that. I DJ'd there too.
Yes.
It was small for me, and I'm 5'6".
Right. So I turned it down. And to be real, I'll be as quick about it as possible. So in the spring of '95, I was tooling around the city. It was a Sunday afternoon, beautiful Sunday afternoon, on my motorcycle.
Okay.
And I stopped at the Amen Corner 2, which was owned by Willie Watson, who also owned Sandy's.
Okay.
So I went in there for a cold, Pepsi or whatever it was. And Willie and I were talking, and he was playing one of my mixtapes. And in came a gentleman with a very heavy Polish accent. And he knew Willie. So the two of them were talking. Well, I had just made a trip to Poland. I think it was either my third or fourth trip to Poland. So I started talking to this man, and it turns out he owned the travel agency where I had purchased my tickets.
Okay.
So we were talking. He was listening to the music, and he asked Willie. He said, whose music is this? I'm looking for a DJ. And Willie pointed at me, and I said, well, that's my mixtape. And he said, well, he had just fired a couple of DJs, and he was looking for a DJ and a DJ manager. And he offered me the job.
Nice.
And where was this?
Well, I didn't know.
Okay.
I assumed it was going to be somewhere out on Milwaukee Avenue.
Okay.
I mean, in the Polish part of the city. That's what I assumed.
What?
So,
okay, go ahead.
So after I accepted the job, I said, okay, where is this? And he said, I thought you knew. I own the Rialto.
Oh, okay. I knew that name was familiar.
Yeah.
Right. So
and for our audience, I don't know, Errol, do you know Rialto? Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So let me just tell you, Rialto was a very smallish club on downtown South Loop, right under the train tracks, on Van Buren.
Van Buren.
14 West Van Buren.
98% men. It had a little back room where they wouldn't let girls go, but it was
you wouldn't want to.
I was curious nonetheless. I went to Columbia College, so I lived down the street in an apartment, and we spent a lot of nights because my friends were gay men and they loved going. We were all kids, but we went up in Rialto as much as they would let us be. So you got a job spinning there.
It was also a forerunner to Walgreens and CVS drugstores.
Excuse me?
I said, if anybody knows the Rialto, it was also a forerunner to CVS and Walgreens.
How so?
Drugstore.
Okay.
I mean all the weed,
you're being facetious.
All the weed,
okay.
And that's where 5 o'clock hit, and people came out of their day jobs and ran in there to buy at that time, a lid or a little bag.
I know, I'm so square. We talked about this last week. I don't remember any of that. I just remember dancing. What's up? Dana Powell is tuning in. Hey, Dana.
Hey, Dana.
He says across from what is now Harold
Washington
Library.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes, famous club. Go ahead, Ty.
The Rialto, all the police officers were on the take. And every payday, I don't remember if it was every week or every 2 weeks, but there would be a stack of envelopes about yay thick. And all day long, police officers would come in, get their envelope, and leave. I mean, all the way up to the captains, with the yellow and black stripes.
Wow.
So we always got advance notice when there was going to be a bust. And so as far as the employees, word went, to all the employees, if you have drugs, which by the way, I'm a square too. I didn't do drugs.
I wasn't that square. I mean, I did
okay.
partake occasionally, but
well, I not only didn't inhale, I mean, I didn't breathe or whatever the thing is.
Okay.
So it was like, just make sure the employees that you have no drugs on you or behind the bar to protect the license. And I kid you not, on one of the busts, everybody's emptying their pockets and throwing whatever they have on the floor. The police actually grabbed a trash can and a broom. Just sweep up everything that was on the floor. And guys got busted in there for hustling, and it was you don't find places like that anymore. It was fun. So that's where I had my first residency, 85 to 86. Just a year. I was not the most popular person because they had fired 2 black DJs. And in fact, I was the first white DJ to have a residency in any of Chicago's gay black bars. So that was also a little groundbreaking in itself.
Yeah, you're a pioneer.
You said you were the first white DJ to have a residency in any gay black bars. Is that right?
In Chicago.
Oh, okay. Very good.
At least that's something Michael Azabuku and I have talked about. And he said,
I'm waiting for somebody to challenge it. No one's challenged it yet. So I believe you.
Well, that's, as I said, it came from Michael Azabuku and I have discussed it, and he can't think of any. So, anywho, I when I started, we were still playing disco and Italo, and then of course, house hit. Did somebody say they had a question?
No, you've just got a bit of an echo, but you're good.
Oh, okay. So then, house hit, and you had Jesse's record came out and Chippy, and then it just blew up. I mean, it was like disco for me. I just had my 64th birthday last week, so I'm the old fart here.
Oh,
happy belated birthday!
Happy belated.
Happy belated.
So can I make a link here? Because I want to pull Easy back into the story, but I know that there were a couple places that you went to after that. So tell us about Jim and Nick.
This is I haven't investigated this yet.
Okay.
But somebody just told me today that they heard Jim had died.
And Jim and Nick were the owners of
the Stop and Drink.
Stop and Drink. And did they recruit you from
or Stop and Stab, or
Stop and Sniff and Scratch, and I
yeah,
remember.
Right off Chicago and Clark.
yeah,
So I heard from someone that that was a great bar, but it was kind of low and nasty. Is that a fair characterization?
very much so, very much
Tell
so.
us about Stop and Drink.
Um, it was like the Rialto. It was just a tavern. You know,
Okay.
it was an old-fashioned tavern. There was barely enough room. The bar was so big. It was in the center of the place. So you just barely had room, about two people wide, all the way around the bar. And in the front was a packaged liquor section and a kitchen, which they no longer used. So they did, well, like I said, packaged liquor. There was the manager was gay. All the employees were black. The bartender during the day was gay. The two bartenders at night were straight, but they were really cool guys. I mean, everybody got along. There was never a big crowd in there. It was just someplace you went for a quick drink, maybe to escape all the the crush of the Rialto and what have you. And once again, I after leaving the Rialto, I would hang out at the Stop and Drink, and at night they would play my tapes. Once again, that's the manager would play my tapes, and when they were played, more people came in, drank, and stayed.
Right.
And eventually I asked him, I said, you know what? You're playing my music or my tapes. Can I bring my turntables down, set them up in the packaged liquor section, and spin from there Friday and Saturday nights free of charge?
Oh.
I said, I'm not worried about money. I just want to play the music.
Mm-hmm.
So I started that, and immediately, the place was so packed you couldn't move. And eventually I became the manager at Stop and Drink, and I convinced Nick and Jim to tear out the packaged liquor and put in a small dance floor.
Mm-hmm. And what year was this time? Because I definitely spent some time at Stop and Drink. That was one of the many places we would frequent.
Yeah, I'm really very bad on dates. I admit that.
I would say that's around 85, 86.
No. The dance floor went in about 90.
Okay, so it was a little bit later.
Yep, the dance floor went about 90. And our last night was October 31st of 92.
So as I understand, Jim, that you were very influential. Obviously, you convinced them to change the makeup of the club, and just to kind of move our story, because this time is fleeting. Jim and Nick, you actually convinced them to create a club that was designed to your liking, that we now know as the Generator. Is that correct?
Right. Somewhere in there, I would stand outside with Nick and Jim during the evenings and talk. We would just, they practically adopted me like a brother. I was a member of their family. I would go out to their house once a week. I think it was Monday nights, and they would make a big family dinner. So there were two pivotal conversations. One of them was, they asked me, why aren't you spinning at one of the big clubs up north? And I said, because there aren't enough clubs. And I'm not going to try and push anybody out of a job. Furthermore, I probably didn't think I was good enough anyway. And then a second conversation was when I told them that I had AIDS. By the time I got tested, it was full blown, no T cells. I mean, it was, the real deal. So there was a third conversation, which they asked me, and Jim, he cried a little bit when I told him I had AIDS, and they really were hurt. And they said, if we build you a big club, do you think you can fill it? And I told them, absolutely, I can. And so they said, well, we're going to make your dream of spinning in a big club, we're going to make that come true. And then it was about a month later, they gave me a choice of 3 locations. They had a realtor that took them around the city. There was a place over by the original warehouse on Jefferson. Mm-hmm. And there were too many commercial businesses and condos in the area. Wasn't crazy about that. Then they brought me down to, I think it was the Plumbers Union Building, which is the end of Randolph at 7 Corners there. I don't know, Randolph, Ogden, whatever. I wasn't crazy about that building because it was all concrete. And then they brought me to 306 North Halsted. And all they had to do was open up the garage door. And I said, this is it. This is it. And they let me design it. They wanted to make it very bougie. I mean, they wanted a bougie club. Kind of like what the Mid turned out to be in terms of, but I wanted it as an homage, more of an homage to Robert Williams and Frankie.
Yeah, it definitely had that feel. I know, Ty, I went there shortly after it was opened, and that was the first thing I felt like. When I walked in, I was with a friend who was much younger than me, and I said to her, listen, this is similar to the experience that I used to tell you about at the warehouse. Like, it had a very similar vibe, and it was the closest thing that I could relate it to, when I was describing. I was like, the generator is the closest thing. So I feel you guys accomplished that.
I will try to get this out in 30 seconds. The name, where did the name come from? I wanted something that was similar to warehouse, powerhouse, and power plant. And I was getting my hair done at Jonathan Blackwell's. Because I was not a natural blonde.
Oh no.
But so I'm there, getting my hair bleached. And I said, we're going to open a new club and I can't figure out a new name. So we started brainstorming. The only thing I could think of was Power Line.
Okay.
And I really didn't, it was right, but I didn't care for it. And he said, how about the generator? And once again, it was Jonathan. That's it. That's
great.
So I owe the name to Jonathan Blackwell.
And you were there for quite a while.
No, I wasn't.
Well, I know you. Okay.
Well, let's just say we opened Memorial Day, 1993.
Yes.
And I had a boyfriend who Nick and Jim did not get along with. And I'll simply say that Christmas morning, 1995, whatever it was, 6 o'clock in the morning, because I think it was a Sunday, Christmas morning. They called me back to the club, and standing there, right there in front of the bass speakers, Nick was standing there, and he said, "You're fired." They said, "We told you we weren't going to deal with you and your boyfriend again, that he was causing problems in the club."
What was he doing?
He was kind of a
Causing problems.
poop starter.
He was causing problems in the
We're not FCC regulated here. You
Okay, he was a shit starter.
yeah.
And he did not get along with the other bartenders.
Okay.
And so anyway, there's I'm leaving out a whole lot of story.
I know. We always leave out a lot so we can come back and fill in the gaps.
Right, but you got to talk about your birthday party there at the generator.
Oh, it was
95.
I'm assuming Nick and Jim had already decided that I was going to be fired. Excuse me.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
No problem. Errol, did you ever get a chance to check out the generator in Chicago?
Did
No?
not get to check out the generator.
Okay.
Oh, that's
You
too
would have
bad.
liked it. It would have been. It would have reminded you of that spirit from
From the garage. Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. What did you ask me?
Yeah, we were talking about that infamous birthday party. I mean,
yes.
95 or so.
Yep. November of 95. So it was, slightly more than a month before they fired me. And so,
but you had almost a 2-year run there. That's not a
little
short
over
amount
2
of time.
years.
Yeah. Most clubs don't last 2 years.
I'm going to bare my soul here. When Nick said that I was fired, I got down on my hands and knees and I cried I was crying on his shoes. That is not a lie. That is the honest truth. I was begging them. And they said, no. They said, he's causing problems. We told you we're not going to deal with it again. And they wouldn't even let me go past the speakers, the bass. The next day, they had the sound system that was in the club was mine.
Okay.
And so the next day, Monday, December 26th, they moved out, like all the records that were there, those were all mine.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Right. So they moved out and it was a primo record collection. Those were all the good ones. And I had all the crap records underneath the DJ booth. So they moved out everything. They hired a moving van. And by Monday afternoon, I had all the speakers and everything in my loft. And they had put in, I believe, matching equipment. So Dana, who was my second in command, he took over as the club manager and the DJ manager. And he was a manager for a while, and then Eddie Watson became the club manager. And I think they ran the show up until 1999. If Dana's online, he can fill that in.
Yep, Dana's been filling the gaps in as we moved along. Tyrone, one Reggie Davenport has asked us a question. There's so much you just unpacked, and I would love to explore more with you. We have such a short amount of time, and I know that Easy told his someone in his family, look, I got an hour. So I'm hoping we might be able to squeeze a little bit more time out of you so we can get your story in here.
There is one story left I would like to tell. So whenever.
we got a little time, but any of the signature tracks that you remember at the Generator, just for those folks who never experienced that?
I didn't have any signature tracks.
Yeah.
I had a reputation for playing the newest music in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And every weekend there were other DJs from the city and people that became future DJs. They were down there with their little pencils and pieces of paper and running up to the DJ booth. Now, I didn't believe in covering the label so people couldn't see. I wanted people to know what I was playing.
Yeah.
Because I was selling it at the same time.
You call it the education, the DJ teaching.
Yeah. I mean,
I never know. Did DJs ever do that? I mean, I've never wanted to tell people what I'm spinning. Like people will come up and say, "What is that?" And I'm happy to share it with them. I guess that's a thing. I don't know about that. Easy.
Yeah, blackout labels was a thing.
I know Chippy talked about that.
I hated people that did that.
All right, so listen, I know you got one more story, but Kevin, I know you've been dying to get Easy back, but I want to unpack a lot of that.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned,
I'm sorry.
No, trust me. Don't apologize because we never have enough time. So, which means we'll have to have a part 2. But I do want to circle back to you, in a little bit about what you said about AIDS. It's something that we don't talk a lot about on this show, but it's such a huge part of house music history. What happened when people were diagnosed with AIDS, what happened, people that we lost, people whose careers were affected by it. But I want to go back to that and let Kevin get Easy back in here in this conversation.
And so we'll simply segue on that question of, this genre was built by a lot of people who came in not necessarily as artists, but they became artists. Their craft, their artistry was part of the house story, is part of the house story, and has elevated the genre. And so I wanted to go to you, Errol, and ask you about, you started name dropping on, some of the Chicago creators that influenced you. I think I heard you mention Steve So Curly, Tyree Cooper, who, both of those gentlemen, friends of the show. So who are some of the other people that have really enlightened your appetite, if you will, for house music, and talk about why?
Well, one of the things that was so unique about it was that, as you mentioned, Kevin, a lot of what was going on at the time when house was starting to break, it was just DJs just kind of going to the next level, right? In terms of just kind of figuring out what to do with, some equipment that they might get, that little 4-second sampler. What can we do to be able to make things kind of work? And, one of the ones like during like the heyday, and when I say heyday, when I graduated from college and moved to Massachusetts, and I think, Kevin, you can probably attest to some of this. The house music scene that was there was kind of something that had to be nourished. It had to be grown. It had to be developed, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that kind of helped to do that was just the combination of being able to do parties where we had 2 turntables or 2 DJ setups, maybe even a keyboard and drum machine setup to be able to do some custom beats, custom music that we might have been putting together just kind of on the whim, maybe like on a Thursday night for a Saturday party.
So who did you see do this, or was this just your innovation, or was there someone in particular that you saw cultivating this sort of live performance combination DJ?
I think some of that was, and I've got to kind of go back in the memories, but one of the people that I remember that was kind of doing those kinds of things was the likes of your Chicago's DJ Fast Eddie, right? He was a DJ, right? Almost to the point where he was kind of blending from a lot of what was going on once again with hip hop and things like that, and made himself into and made himself into someone that was doing a lot to move the needle for house music in general. And so when I started to kind of understand what some of that was, it was like, you know what? I think that it's not just about what you can put onto the turntables, but what you can do kind of impromptu, which is one of the things that started to really kind of take off, where it was like, hey, this isn't even out or around yet in terms of beats or in terms of new tracks that are kind of coming around, but they're blending in with the things that so sometimes you're not even sure whether or not it's something that's already on wax or something that's kind of just being played with or toyed with. That was one of the things that really started my interest in trying to do my own kind of production, drum machines, just that kind of thing.
And so where are things today for DJ Eazy-E in terms of music production, DJing? What are you doing these days?
One of the things that I'm really doing now is actually, I kind of call it helping the next generation, because I'm doing a lot of mentorship with teenagers, whether it be remotely or directly, with helping them with music composition, just learning a little bit more about how to put together music, how to make it, I won't necessarily say radio commercially, but being able to take your feelings and what you're gravitating to and actually putting it down on tracks and helping them with arrangements, compositions, and those kinds of things. And they love it because it gives them a way to kind of feedback and use their creative sense to move on and learn a lot more about. And it's not necessarily just for house music, although the passion is there for house music as well. It's for whatever they feel that they want to bring out of themselves internally.
That's great.
That's great that you do that. Yeah.
Yeah, we talk on occasion about the succession planning, the preparation of the next generation to be able to carry forth, the passion that we all have for this genre, because a lot of us are up there. Tyrone, you're certainly well into the time spent with the genre, but so are many of the rest of us.
Yep.
And
I don't know about you. I'm just getting started. I'm not sure what.
Okay. Yes, Lori is burning things up with a crew called the Good Girls.
That's right, Good Girls.
Okay.
The Vintage House Show. She's done some great sets after these shows, and so we appreciate everyone that tunes in to the Vintage House Show every Wednesday night, 9 o'clock Central Time. We've been thrilled to have both Tyrone Mix and Errol Eazy-E James joining us. And of course, they have so much more to talk about. And Lori, you were going to spend some time with Tyrone on one of the questions that emerged from his last response there.
Well, I know you got at least one more story in you. You know, we're at the 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. We're at 8 o'clock for you. Anyway, we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You gentlemen been very generous. But I did want to kind of circle back to something you said when you just, you know, were bold enough to say that when you were diagnosed with AIDS, and I appreciate you sharing that. I think that even in 2020, many people in the community are still very closeted about their own status. And I, as a, you know, I've got many hats, but some of you may know that my day job for many years has been to work in the AIDS field, you know, working in prevention and care and housing and an administrative role, and now with the company that I work for, with Gilead. But I just feel like there's so much to talk about. There's so many. The reason, you know, that I do this work, that I work in the gay community and with gay men, you know, is because of AIDS, because of the way it touched my life in the 80s, the number of people that I lost. Our friend Dana Powell just, you know, put a post. He said, you know, somewhere around 80% of the people who worked at the warehouse are gone. You know, I could say that for all of the friends that I hung out with who went there with me. Many of them are gone. So Tyrone, I know we don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but I do want to ask if you might come back and we have a longer discussion, maybe around World AIDS Day, about really what it meant for AIDS to impact the house community, you know. And if you want to say something to it now briefly, feel free to do so.
Well, anybody that was there when I was there would remember that at the end of the night, I would usually say that according to the city health officials, 1/3 of gay black men in the city were infected with HIV. So I said, look to who is standing to the left of you or to the right of you. I said, one of you might be infected. So grab those condoms and be safe. And Nick and Jim hated that I did that. They told me that. They said that you're ending the night on a downer. And I said, but to me, it's important. And the only signature song I had was the last song of the night, which was always Dr. Feelgood.
Oh, how about that? Thanks for bringing that up. And I think Easy, you know, Larry Levan, someone mentioned, you know, please say his name. Larry Levan from Paradise Garage was taken too soon. There were so many of our.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You want to comment?
Frankie, him, Frankie, there's just so many of them, and it's the thing that I think helps sometimes is the fact that the recordings that we have to remember all these folks by is one of the key things that, you know, it brings us not just back to those days, but to the people that have helped to create what we have for today. So
they will live on forever.
They will live on forever because of that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll do something special. World AIDS Day is coming up. December 1st every year is World AIDS Day. And maybe we can you know, have a little deeper conversation about that and maybe do some tributes. So Kevin, I know that this is your show tonight, and I've kind of stomped all over it, so forgive me for that.
This is our show.
What happens when you put me on, you know?
The Philosophical Grooves.
Bad idea.
Yeah, the Philosophical Grooves edition is just an opportunity as we wrap the show to certainly get a little philosophical with our guests, particularly as, you know, the world is a totally different place than it certainly was when we started in all of our pursuits of musical nirvana, to quote you, Errol, as you said. And so as we look at the world today, if you were able to be able to return to the world with a conscious and a memory of what the world was when you left it, what would you want to bring forward from a nostalgic standpoint versus what would you want to leave behind about the world? Not necessarily your personal life, but what you've experienced, what you've observed in the world. So this is sort of a story or a question that you can tell about reincarnation. If you were to be reincarnated, how much of what you know about the world today would you bring back into that new life? Go, Errol.
Oh,
That's deep.
man,
That's too deep.
That is deep.
I'm glad you
I
started
had
with
to take
Errol.
notes during that
You know what?
question. I'm like,
You know what? I think part of that comes down to, and I don't know if I'm going to answer it the way that you've actually asked it, because it's still kind of rattling around in my head. But if I were to come back reincarnated, I would hope that there is a lot more love and understanding in the world. And I think that that's something that back in the day, you probably saw a lot more of that. And I think that I'm going to just leave it at that. I think a lot more love and a lot more understanding.
amen.
Mic drop. DJ Purple likes the question and the response. Tyrone, over to you, sir.
First of all, I want to thank you for having me on. I'm thrilled to be part of the archives now. To answer the question, I think Errol has it. He has it correct. Right now, there's not only in the United States but worldwide, there's a sickness. There's an evil that's happening. There's rampant hate everywhere. So, you know, as a Christian, you look forward to the promised afterlife, because what we all seek is heaven.
Is that another mic drop?
That's another.
Yeah.
Okay. We're dropping 2 mics.
You guys definitely rose to the challenge of tonight's philosophical groove.
It got real deep.
And again, Lori, you brought an elevated vibe tonight.
Okay. I'll try to do it next week. I can't guarantee.
And a smile. You have a smile, girl.
I'm
a beautiful smile.
Blowing up. Hey, Lori. Hey. And so we want to leave everyone tonight with those expressions, positive expressions of, you know, aspiration to be more loving, more caring and compassionate for humanity, to help one another really get to that next life of love that is endless and ever infinite. And so we only here at Vintage House only serve to at least share these important stories, share these perspectives from, you know, individuals who've contributed and impacted and influenced this genre of house music. And so for those of you who've participated in tonight's show, we thank you. We're back next Wednesday, 9 o'clock. on the Vintage House on WNUR 89.3 FM page, Lori Branch's page, Kevin McFall's page. We're also available on YouTube sometimes at the DJchannel.com on Twitch. So check us out, VintageHouseShow.com for past episodes. You can download wherever your favorite podcasts can be found. We're there with you. This is the Vintage House Show, your main man Mega, and
the rest of us.
Love,
Thank you.
peace, and happiness.
co-host Lori Branch, Tyrone Mix, Errol, Easy E James. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Be
Thank you,
well,
guys.
stay safe, everyone, and good night.
Peace.
Good night, everybody.
You know.